Hi guys, welcome to week 6 of Mpai 5600 here at Georgetown University. Just a couple of announcements. The terrain walk, October 21st at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're going to be there in person, let me know. If you're going to be there online, let me know. Again, it's not required, but if you want to do your, not this upcoming paper, but the paper that's due in November on the Capitol Hill, I'll let you do it, but you have to attend it somehow. So I just want to give you that update, and I'll send the Zoom and videos in a separate announcement. I'll do that next week. Paper briefing, or I should say the paper, not the briefing, is due October 20th, and I'll give you guidance. And this is your paper 2. Most of you should have your correction strategies back. I'll have those marked by Monday if you haven't gotten it, but paper originally had it on the 13th. I pushed it to the 20th just to give you some time. And that should give you, again, enough time to go ahead and do it and get started based on the guidance I'm about to give. So review of the past week. So Iraq WMD, there was obviously collection failures. You saw the documentary on Curveball. There was also other collection failures that led to that intelligence failure. There were analytical failures, as you saw. The aluminum tubes, the overemphasis on groupthink, or the emphasis on or getting to a consensus, confirmation bias, where there is the theory of biological weapons, and then Curveball, as bad as it was used to confirm that theory. Those are all analytical failures that were displayed. There was organizational failures. If your only person that provides the information is George Tenet, the CIA director at the time, and there's no other way to get information to policymakers, that's an organizational failure. You could have all the red teaming, you could have all the devil's advocacy, you could have all the other alternative methods, but if it's filtered at one person, and the information is based on his goals, his biases, etc., that's an organizational failure. And then the policy interface, and really the Maddow documentary goes in this sense. And did policymakers, if not politicize intelligence, push answers that they wanted to hear? And is that why such bad intel bubbled up to the top? And again, you can make the argument that Curveball was a poor collection, lack of analytical tradecraft, but Curveball wouldn't have happened if there wasn't a policy impetuous to look for all this confirmed, or to confirm the desire to go to war with Iraq. So I'll let you decide whether it was chicken or the egg in this case. So 9/11, again, was 9/11 intelligence failure? I talked about that. You could see it two ways. I argue that it was a organizational failure, that we had the two people known and we still couldn't find them, or two people that were known Al-Qaeda affiliates in our country, had visas, communicating with Osama bin Laden, but yet our intelligence agencies couldn't coordinate enough to actually solve the 9/11 plot. What did you do? Bin Laden determined to attack in the U.S.? Again, I asked this question. A lot of people have criticized George Bush that he was warned on 9/11, and I'm not quite sure I agree with that. I think the intelligence, as you saw in the National Geographic documentary, was so vague that it was difficult to actually action that. And then the organizational issues, as I just talked about, really highlighted in the NSA documentary. Two people, known terrorists, yet they were not able to get the information to the right people that could have unraveled the 9/11 plot. And then as you think through this and you think through next week's, you have to ask, where along the chain could federal and state government have prevented a 9/11? And that's a key point. We talked about the horizontal intelligence, but vertical intelligence as well. Information not being pushed down to state and local officials that might have been able to stop the 9/11 plot. So paper 2, again, this is, I'm looking for you to examine the case studies that we talked about and go in them in depth. I will allow you to choose an intelligence issue, and I'll either allow you to actually talk about a case study in depth, or allow you to choose an intelligence issue, poor collection, groupthink, etc., and show me how that issue weaved its way through several of the case studies we talked about. If you want to do a case study outside of class that we haven't talked about, let me know. I will allow it, but I want to know what it is before you go down that road. So we've got 2 weeks. Start thinking about your papers this week. Start doing your papers next week. And I think we should be good. So again, examples. What I don't want is a laundry list of every intelligence failure. I want you to tell me, 1 or 2 issues that cause the intelligence failure. And there's a plethora you can choose from, but I want you to choose 2 and then argue your points in depth. So if you want to talk about collection, you can talk about it in several of the case studies. Pearl Harbor, we didn't know where the aircraft carriers were. Yom Kippur War, we had bad HUMINT on over-reliance on one HUMINT source. And then Iraq War, you saw the case study in Curveball. All failures in collection tradecraft that cascaded into the intelligence failures that you see above. Failures in analysis. Pearl Harbor, as I mentioned in previous weeks, there was, again, groupthink, confirmation bias, just poor analytical, racist analytical frameworks about the Japanese not being able to fly aircraft or not having the acrobatic skills to be pilots. Those are all failures in analysis. The confessions case study, we talked about vividness bias and confirmation bias and all the other cases that or biases that led to that failure. And then Iraq WMD, as I just mentioned, there was massive groupthink to come to a consensus. There was politicization and policy interference. I talked about the Iraq WMD case study. The confessions, arguably that bad information that was brought up in the confessions bubbled up to the top because there was political pressure to make those arrests. And then 9/11, I just talked about the case study of communicating the data, and Dahl brings it up in depth, to policymakers. And that was a poor politicization of intelligence, which led to 9/11. I'll let you argue that one way or another. And then organizational theory. 9/11, obviously the NSA documentary brings it up, that there was information in our government that could have unraveled the 9/11 plot, but it couldn't be actioned on because of poor organization and poor communications within our government itself. Pearl Harbor, as I mentioned in the previous week, you can make the argument that information was at the federal level, but it wasn't communicated down to the decision makers, the action arm that could have actually done something. That is an organizational intelligence failure. And then you have the fusion centers that we cover a bit in the 9/11 case study. And this is the argument that information is collected at the federal level, but it isn't pushed down to the action officer that can do something about it. So here's the guidance. Do not give me this laundry list. I want you to choose 1 or 2 aspects and drill down in depth going forward. Please don't give me laundry lists. Please don't give me laundry lists. So with that being said, I know we have to keep going in this class. So this week, again, lots of documentaries. We're looking at really the post 9/11 counterterrorism cases. Fort Hood, the underwear bomber, Boston, and ISIS and the European Union. The readings are the Fort Hood shooting, the Boston Marathon bombing, congressional report. The documentary, great documentaries there. Please watch them, take notes. And the question to think is, why do we still have these failures going forward? Despite the billions, trillions, depending on how you monetize it, we've spent on counterterrorism. Why do we still have these problems? So I'll have your collection strategy papers back to you if I haven't already. And if there's questions or issues, don't hesitate to contact me.